Okay, the malarkey seems to know no end. As they say, an error only becomes a mistake when you refuse to correct it, and this cult-like disinformation, misinfotainment, seems to know no end. No end to the shame, the shame. Now, these are the people who bring you can't lift these stones weren't lifted, you can't do this, you can't do that. It's absolute bollocks. It's just, like 2 clicks away, you've got all of this information at your hand, and that you're not researching if you don't present it. And if you refuse to present it after once you know about it, and you do know about it, then you're a fraud. They say you can't lift the heaviest cranes is 6.6 tons in the same video. Oh, but they lifted a 53-ton column. That's in Rome. But then again, not to compare to that these other obelisks that were moved from Egypt by the Romans over 1,700 miles, and we still freak out over these stones at Baalbek that were moved less than a fraction, 2/3 of a mile. And they say it's moved uphill. No, it's level ground. Again, this is misinformation, misinfotainment. Just fact check the claims and they all fall apart. This is pure bunk. So now I was going to do one a few months back. I thought I'll let it go, but now they're doubling down on it. So Petra, you look at this information as a whole. When you exclude information, that says a lot about your quality anyway, and your character. And I think this is more than not just a capability issue. This is coming to a character issue. So Petra is the local focus, but let's look at it in a wider perspective, and let's include details. Details count. Petra, Jerash in Jordan, Baalbek, Palmyra. Let's mark those out. What's going on here? Well, they're all cities on the boundaries of the desert. This is a lot of desert. They're all there on the boundary of there. All these Bedouin caravans were moving through there. Now, Bedouins, let's examine. Okay, so Bedouin culture is not this simplistic, simple thing that it was. Bedouin actually incorporates people they were craftsmen. They had swords. They had tools. Where did they get? Where did they make these items that they carried with them? They had to forge these. They had to make these. This is part of a larger Bedouin culture. It is not just the simplistic people just roaming across on camels on the ground, scratching out a living. They were involved in trade, these large Bedouin caravans. And where did they arrive to? Petra, Jerash, Baalbek, Palmyra. This was the sites they were going to. These are all on the Roman frontier, also on the trade and the tax frontier. Huge amounts of trade were coming in and going out through these cities. If you look at them individually, and then you present a false picture, you get a false idea, and then you tell people rubbish. Absolute, complete lack of information. So Petra, Jordan, the famous treasury building. What do we have? Well, what do we have? We have Corinthian architecture. Jerash in Jordan, Temple of Zeus. This was also not just a few temples, it was a larger city. Just like Petra, just like Baalbek and Palmyra, it was a large city built on trade. Huge amounts of records still extant at this moment. Not to include them is Bunk. What else do we have? We have Corinthian columns as well. Also Corinthian architecture. It's not just the column capitals, it's the school of architecture. We go to the Roman temples at Baalbek, which again, these Bunk artists will to your face tell you they were not built by Romans, which is just ridiculous. It is a lie, it is a fraud, and this is the cult which has built up around this. And yes, like a recent example said that I saw one the other day, oh my God, that the Spanish did not settle America because it was uninhabitable. So essentially the North Americans didn't live there. They didn't exist. So these people actually deny the existence of thousands of year-old cultures. It is the lowest rung of scumbaggery that exists. It's one thing to perpetuate a small little fraud, but to deny the existence of other people to sell your bogus rubbish books is shameful. It is the lowest. It is not even. You're not even on the first rung of the ladder. You're down in the sewer. Corinthian architecture, also the columns and this whole schools of architecture, the ornamentation, everything about it screams Greco-Roman architecture. There can be no doubt about this. To deny this is delusional. It's mental illness. To perpetuate it is snake oil and fraud. Palmyra, again, wonderful colonnades, hundreds and hundreds of columns with these capitals on there, not just a few, large scale. This was built, and it was built on a large scale. And what else do they have in common? Well, Corinthian architecture, of course. It is plain as day. It is not to be, it is ridiculous. Now, Corinthian architecture is Greco-Roman. Doesn't exist before. That again is it's a accepted fact. It's not even really to be argued. It really is ridiculous to even bring up this now. It's not just the column capitals, it's also the decorative features that go with it, the proportions of the columns, the proportions of the temples, and all these other features that go with it. Well studied, well known, well documented in the writings as well. So again, laziness. Now, what else does Petra have? Petra has a Roman forum and amphitheatre. Jerash has a Roman amphitheatre, forum and amphitheatre in Baalbek, and it's also to be found in Palmyra. These are all built on the same schools of architecture, and again, now some dates might be slightly argued about, some features might be slightly argued about, but then this small window of doubt is extended to this huge doubt which is not there, and then they insert this lost civilization rubbish. Absolute bollocks. BS in extremis. The Roman legion of that area, again, records were known, the mines were known. For instance, Mons Claudianus down in Egypt, they brought columns there for Baalbek. This is all well recorded. The techniques, well recorded, well known. The evidence is extant. What are all these cities? And it's not just a single temple, it's a city. They were oases of shade and water, even still until recent years, probably still now. There's a few caravans going, probably more on the tourist side, but the shade and the water of these cities was vital. It was, again, well known, going back ages and ages, long before the Romans come along and built this stuff as well. And the Nabateans. Now, the Nabateans, when they say nomads, desert nomads, well, it's more, they actually had places where they would settle down, centres, villages, marketplaces and stuff. They weren't just wandering haphazard. It was part of a larger, broader culture. Again, it's just ridiculous. Now, why was Petra so important and famous? It was famous for water management. We find these channels going throughout there. And again, these mysterious tunnel entrances, they're not mysterious at all. They're cisterns. Again, we see they were managing water. People come out of a desert, you got shade, you got water, there were orchards and all sorts of stuff coming here. Trade coming from the Mediterranean, trade going into the desert parts. Things like salt and other things vital for people inland. This is History 101. There are hundreds of cisterns in Petra and maybe you can't see the scale, but they're quite large. They're quite large, and they've been dug out over time. It is sandstone. You can see the weathering even on the temples there. Now here we even see famous depiction. It's been a bit weathered out and destroyed. But we see the camel train and being led, because the eye of the needle is also, many people suggest that the entrance into Petra is the eye of the needle as mentioned in the Bible. So this room here, it's huge, it's perfect, it's blah, 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 it's fantastic, it's amazing. Well, yeah, it is, but not really, because in any comparison to the ancient cultures, especially Roman at the time, this room is actually insignificant. It's sort of like a minor curiosity. It doesn't really, the amount of stone, these hundreds of thousands of feet, this is, again, minuscule compared to of the dozens and dozens of known quarry sites, the amount that was moved out of there, recorded, the wages of the people recorded. This is all on the and they moved huge amounts of stone, and this room is insignificant in comparison. The volume of how many aqueducts are there? Well, there are lots of them, but the accuracy, the volume, the length of them just, again, dwarfs this. This makes it insignificant. The basic tools, and including the grommer and the chorobates, this level to get a square room somehow is used as a example of high technology, ancient technology, lost civilizations. It is beyond ridiculous to suggest this. It really is. It's cringeworthy. Petra is amazing to look at, but in comparison to what was happening across the region, across the empire, insignificant. And again, this room, it's a squared off room. Look, like it's a squared off room. Big BFD, big F deal in the scale of things. It is cringeworthy. It is this type of stuff is what allows people like Zoe Hawass and others, the establishment, to just destroy the alternative researchers, because they just look at this, look at Brian, look what he's doing. This is why it's called pseudo archaeology and pseudoscience. It is below. You're not even floating on the sewer. You're down on the ground. You're down at the bottom of the sewer with this type of stuff. It is poor quality. It is non-researched. It is snake oil. So there we see like what's anyway. We're going to go into it. Petra was an oasis of shade and water from the burning deserts. It was a trading center. The people who lived here made their wealth from trade, coming in and going out. So, Leptis Magna in Libya, and this was also a trade frontier from the Sahara Desert to the Mediterranean. We see the same Corinthian columns, the colonnades, and the same type of features here. This is typical, bog standard Roman architecture and Roman design. These features undeniable. Now, Pelagio, but he could base his work on Vitruvius. We see you just look at Roman architecture. There's a pathology to ignore Roman architecture because it busts wide this myth of lost high technology. What can be cut, what can be lifted. They did it, and it's recorded. It's done all over the place. Now we see Pelagio, who based his work on Vitruvius. We see again this is just a standard Roman temple design. It's your typical one as a pediment, but there were variations throughout the Roman Empire, hundreds of them. And again, it's just not, well, I'm assuming they just don't research it because they start with an idea of what they think is the truth, and they only look at what they want to see. Only what they want to see, and then they sell it on. Now, this is Petra, Corinthian column capitals, standard Greco-Roman cornice, the rosettes, standard issue for Corinthian order architecture. It's broken off. You can see the palmet there. There are palmets on the corner, standard Roman architecture, Corinthian capital. Now, even, again, that's that corner palmet. This is from the temple of Antonius and Faustina in Rome. You can even see the scroll work it's the same. It is a Roman temple, 100%. The exact date of it, okay, that's a bit, we're a few decades here. Was it Hadrian or was it after? But this is a Roman temple, 100%. I even see the copy of the tragic monument. This is, again, a standard Greco-Roman feature in all sorts of places. Still used now, coincidentally, but this is ancient. You even see the, on the top, Corinthian again, acanthus scroll work, and computer's freezing. Okay, so Petra, every facet of it, every feature of it screams the same story. So even what do we have now? Even with the weathered carvings, even with what's left, we can tell every decorative feature, every single bloody thing about this is of the Roman school of architecture. We even have the winged victory in there. It's said to be Isis because now the sistrum's gone away, but we still see the cornucopia again. Classical descriptions of that time. Hadrian visited Petra in 131 and gave his name also to the city. Hadrian's Arch in Geras is another example of Roman architecture. This was made in blocks. You could just drop that over because they didn't have cliff faces in Geras, but this feature, you can just drop it in there and it's just copy-paste over. The Roman city and the Roman forum, every single feature, Corinthian, you could just transplant this from any Roman architectural feature all over the Roman world. The rosettes, every single feature about this. This thing about Baalbek the temples not being Roman, the walls we'd have no records, the temples are undoubtedly Roman. Petra as well, the lost civilization, bunk, absolute bunk, fraud. It's snake oil.